There we go. Yeah, it wouldn't be a stream. It wouldn't be my first stream in 2 years without some sort of minor cluster. All right, let's get into this. So yes, it has been 2 years since I did a stream, and mostly in that time I've been guests on other people's streams. But it's time for me to step up a little bit and try to get this channel going. I'm going to give it a few moments here to let people in and get them helping to help people get settled. I know that Doc Blaylock is here. So, Doc, you're in for a show one way or the other. So it's either going to be so bad it's good kind of experience, or it's going to be something that actually actually you'll find interesting. A couple of quick announcements here regarding this. My own comic book campaign, Demifoot, Urban Sasquatch on Indiegogo, did not fund. And so we're going to be relaunching here very soon on Fund My Comic. We're going to be making some changes to the to the campaign this time around, try to correct some errors. For example, there'll be a digital tier, and we'll make some other adjustments as well. And hopefully we'll have a better outcome. With Indiegogo, you only have 2 months to reach goal, and I had evidently needed more than that. By the time I got started getting into a groove for pitching it and doing the kind of carnival working that crowdfunding requires, it was already too late. We had to close it out at about 40% of goal. So again, Katie Did from Katie Did's channel was instrumental in the level of success that it got. We wouldn't have gotten anywhere near what we got without her assistance and her promotion. So I'm going to be taking some cues from some other crowdfunders who have been way more successful, and we'll see what happens here. But let's get on with this presentation. Alrighty, so today, as the title states, we'll be talking about this person, Dale Keown, and more specifically, a version of the Hulk that he created along with Peter David during Peter David's 10-year run. Peter David, as a writer of the Hulk, had a 10-year run on the Incredible Hulk, which is something that creators don't really usually get to do anymore, particularly with titles in the big two. They just don't. And by the way, I'm depending on the audience to tell me if my audio is okay and all that kind of stuff. Also, I do believe super chats are enabled for this, and certainly I'd be foolish to say don't super chat, but understand that I may not. If I'm on a train of thought, I like to finish that train of thought before I read a super chat, so it may not be read right away. All right, so this is an image from the cover of an issue of Amazing Heroes, which was my favorite comic book zine of the 1980s and into the 1990s. It was not Wizard. It was a black and white comic. Had a full color cover always, but the interiors were all printed on a newsprint like paper. It was the same dimensions as a comic book, and it was my favorite because it seemed to go more in depth, and you got to see the pen and ink versions of everything. With the preview art was all pen and ink. Nothing was color on the inside. And on this cover, we have a very fun image of Dale Keown. This is probably something he did around 1992. His particular run on Incredible Hulk lasted from 1990 to 1993. Just for reference, I graduated high school in 1992, so I was that age when this came out. And Dale here, it's funny, people who have been watching Comicsgate material on YouTube in particular, they know what Dale looks like. And it's funny to me that he hasn't really changed in appearance at all from 1992. I mean, yes, this is a caricature he drew of himself, but still, I mean, he pretty much looks like this today. He's got that 80s rocker hair usually. Sometimes he gets a cut, but sometimes it's kept long, and about the same build. And I find that funny. The man doesn't seem to age like the rest of us. But this particular version of the Hulk that's standing behind him is really the subject of today's stream. Um, and we're going to be getting back to we're going to be talking about this in detail. But the fans at the time referred to it as the merged Hulk. In the years since Peter David left the title, a number of other writers, of course, have come onto the title and tried to retcon this version. And some people call it the Professor Hulk. Some people call it other things. It's not the Professor Hulk. It's not. It's not a version that has been presented even in the movies. The current version of the Mark Ruffalo Hulk, which I don't like. This is not it. This is something different. And we're going to go into what Dale, as an artist, got to do with this character as this presentation goes on. So let's see here. Okay, so Dale's first issue of the Incredible Hulk was actually the last part of a four-part story. Let me see if I can adjust this here. Like I say, it wouldn't be there we go. Okay. Now you can see the whole cover. It was cropping off at the top, and I don't like that. Anyway, Countdown was a four-part series in which a villain had poisoned the Hulk. And normally poisons don't work. Diseases and poisons, they don't affect the Hulk, but this one was specially designed to fight the Hulk, and he was dying, and he had to find the cure for this condition of his within 4 issues. And the covers were all drawn by Walt Simonson, another favorite of mine. And the artist on the first 3 issues was the regular artist of the Hulk at the time. His name was Jeff Purves. We'll get to him in a second. But what I want to talk about here is that this little box down here that you used to see on comic books, this is where the barcode would have gone if you bought it from like a drugstore or a grocery store or any kind of newsstand that uses a barcode. For comic book shops, they didn't usually at that time have barcodes. They just rang it up like on a normal cash register. So the artwork that would be put in this box, in this case, was this one. And this was really our first glimpse at what Dale Keown's version of the Hulk would be. It's a fun little image. I don't know who inked it. He probably inked it himself, just because it's got a clean line look. But if you opened up the first issue of Countdown, or sorry, the 4th issue of the Countdown storyline, Dale Keown's first issue, you're greeted with a great page that we're going to get to in a second. But prior to Dale, this was the artist on the Hulk. His name was Jeff Purves, and his version of the Hulk was sort of a simplified version of Todd McFarlane's version. One of the things that was that he had really cemented in was the idea that the Hulk's eyes were really far apart. Now you'll notice that the Hulk is fully dressed in his little box art up here, and the reason why was because during this period of Jeff Purves's art, the Hulk had a different kind of lifestyle than we're used to seeing him. Usually, he was this wandering monster hero who would kind of like Kane on Kung Fu. He'd get himself and others into and out of trouble and had adventures that way. But during the Purves run of Peter David's run, the general public thought the Hulk was dead, and they had no idea that he had reverted to this earlier gray version of himself. And so when this gray monster shows up outside of Las Vegas, a casino owner decides to hire him as an enforcer. So the Hulk's job during this whole run was to defend a casino called the Coliseum in Las Vegas from the mob. Mobsters would come in, try to sell him, insurance, and the Hulk, as in this new persona as Joe Fixit, would chase them out. Now, the Hulk did adopt a secret identity, so to speak, called Joe Fixit, but it's very important to note that during Peter David's actual issues of this, the Gray Hulk thought of himself as the Hulk. He didn't think of himself as Joe Fixit. It was just an alias he was using so that people wouldn't know he was the Hulk. This version of the Hulk had memories of being the the green version, the one that had the Hulk speak. The classic Green Hulk that I have a sort of a I call him the classic Hulk because he was the version that was in the comic book magazine from the late 60s through the 70s and into the early 80s. And he had a special way of speaking. It was kind of like a combination of Tonto, Tarzan, and Frankenstein. Hulk smash, puny humans. Hulk, you know, doesn't know what lawsuit means. That kind of thing. And the gray version was much more articulate. He was actually a lot closer to Ben Grimm, the Thing. He was kind of like Ben Grimm on barbiturates. He was ornerier, meaner, or could be meaner, um, but still a hero. So this is the version that we had been seeing for about 2 years prior to Dale taking over. All right, so this is the first page the penciled by Dale of the Incredible Hulk. Now, keep in mind that the Hulk he's drawing here is actually an emaciated version. He's sick, and the inker for this issue was Mary Severin, and I think she was probably brought in because her inks they didn't want it to be such a jarring change from Jeff Purvez's artwork to Dale Keown with his clean line look. And so she was brought in to kind of soften the blow a little bit, so it wouldn't be quite so jarring. Mary Severin, of course, a woman who worked at Marvel for many years as an inker. She also happened to draw this classic Hulk cover that's one of my favorites, where the Green Hulk is coming up out of a hole in the street that presumably he made when he landed. So she'd been with Marvel for a very long time and was very trusted as a sort of a fixer inker to help with little projects like this. Later on, Dale got an inker named Mark Farmer who really helped hone the clean line look. So, and Dale didn't really do any changes for the Gray Hulk. He didn't really do it. The eyes are still very far apart. He's got these great big exaggerated caveman brows that are sort of segmented. It's not one brow going across both eyes. It's two very large ones. And the hairdo was interesting. This version of the Hulk, when he would change from Banner to the Hulk, he didn't grow any new hair. The old green version, what they would do is they would have him actually get more hair as he on his head as he changed, so that he still had a full head of hair. Whereas this one has a little tuft of hair sort of on the top and doesn't grow any hair on the sides. The implication, of course, being that his skin had stretched, and that was the same head of hair that Banner had, but because Fix-It or the Gray Hulk had a bigger head, it just looked that way. And now in the late 80s, Marvel was experimenting a lot with changing the looks of a lot of their characters. This was the era in which Spider-Man got the famous black costume. Storm had gone from her 70s outfit to a Mohawk Sheena Easton kind of thing. And with the Hulk, they decided to have him regress into something a lot closer to what Stan Lee had intended for the Hulk way back in 1962. Just going to check here, make sure everything looks good. Okay, the stream's going fine. All right. So on the cover of Incredible Hulk #1, the Hulk had gray skin because the printer could do that on the cover, but for the interior art, the printer had a problem making a consistent gray from page to page. There were some pages where the Hulk was purple, others where he was blue. It was a 4-color comic book process back then, and gray was just too subtle a color to do using that process. And there was one page in particular where the Hulk was like this bright, ghastly green, and so Stan decided that would be the color they'd go with, and that's why the Hulk was green. But on the cover, he was gray. The Gray Hulk that had emerged just before Todd McFarlane took over the title again under Peter David was a jarring change for comic book fans, but they liked it because he was part of that grim and gritty era. This version of the Hulk, he liked to be left alone, just like the classic green version, but he also rather enjoyed kicking ass. The Green Hulk always sort of kicked ass reluctantly. He didn't really want to do it, but this version, again, it was portrayed as a simply a smarter version. Hey, that it was portrayed as a smarter version of the Green version. Actually, had the sophistication to enjoy, uh, the cathartic release of beating on other things and monsters and things. So, if you think of the sort of like the Hulk meets the Punisher, that's what the gray version was. Okay. Now everything came to a head, however, in Incredible Hulk 372. Up until this point, as I mentioned, the gray version of the Hulk thought of himself as just as the same monster that had been green. For example, there was a story that Peter David did where the character returned to a place called Jarilla's World, a subatomic universe that the Hulk had an adventure in the 70s. That story was written by Harlan Ellison. And so when the Gray Hulk arrived in Jarilla's World, he had memories of being there as the green version. But then, as you can tell on this cover, something rather interesting happened. This was where everything that Peter David has started building in his run was starting to come to a head. You see, in that comic, and it's first of all, it's very important to understand that the Gray Hulk had a different mechanism for coming out than the Green one did. The Green one, of course, as everybody knows from watching the TV series, would come out in times of stress. Didn't matter what time of day it was. If Banner achieved a certain threshold of stress, he would turn into the Green Hulk to cope with it. The Gray Hulk, however, transformed into the Gray Hulk at night. So regardless of what emotional state Banner was in, as soon as the sun went down, he would turn into the Gray Hulk. So in broad daylight, this was a scene in which Banner was trying to find his long lost wife, Betty Ross, and Betty Ross had boarded a train and was leaving in the train, and he was trying to catch up with her, and the stress caused him to change. And we see something that we have never seen before and never seen since, and that was Banner turning into the Hulk, but shedding his skin as he did it. And I think the reason why Peter David chose to do it this way was so that the audience wouldn't really realize what was happening until you turn the page and you saw Dale Keown in all of his classic Hulk glory full page spread. I think the reason also why Peter David did the whole skin shedding thing was so that to help the plot along, because eventually investigators come and they find Banner's skin and blood lying on the ground, and they're able to confirm who it was by testing the DNA. But anyway, Peter David and I, he was a talented writer, but he and I had sparred a lot online, particularly on his blog, because in addition to being a competent and good writer, he was also about as leftist as the day is long. And so anytime he tried to deviate from sticking with the thing he was an expert on, which was comics, and trying to tell people how to feel about certain issues and things like that, that's when I usually sparred with him. But one other habit that he had in his stories was he would fundamentally change things about the character in order to serve a particular moment. So as I mentioned, the Hulk shedding his skin when he changes isn't something that happened before or after this moment. And he only did it to serve this moment. So, not something I would have done, but it did have the effect of making us wonder what really was happening to Bruce Banner until this glorious full page bleed. And keep in mind also that this version of the Hulk, the classic green one, we hadn't seen in probably 5 or 6 years. I think he appeared briefly for one issue during John Byrne's run, but prior to that, we hadn't seen him since the very beginning, I think, of Bill Mantlow's run in the very early 80s. Right when the TV show ended, that's when Marvel decided to tell the writers, okay, now that the show is over, we don't have to make the comic book resemble the show in any way, shape, or form, so go ahead and go crazy, shake things up. And that's when the Hulk kind of suffered a little bit. But this classic green version returning was just an incredible moment for a Hulk fan. Going back in time a little bit to John Byrne's run on the series, this is about 4 years earlier, he had established the difference physically between the green version and the gray version. Banner here is in some sort of like holodeck like environment where he's able to look at holographic representations of his alter egos, and he talks about the physical differences. Um, the Green Hulk is was described as being about 1,000 pounds and weighing, sorry, and being about 7 feet tall, whereas the gray version was about 900 pounds and was about 6'6". He also had different posture than the Hulk. I think that they would be closer in height probably if the posture on the gray version here was was better. But another thing that often happened with the gray version was he kept remnants of Banner's shirt because he didn't get big enough to completely destroy it, like the Green Hulk often did. But looking at this a little bit more closely here, one of the Hulk's big, and sorry for the quality of this image here, I had to enlarge it with an AI program online just to try to get a decent enough image to really look at it. The Green Hulk, as most people know, gets more physically powerful the more stress he endures. Right? It's not just anger; it's also other emotions that cause stress, like guilt and all kinds of other things. But usually, the thing that most people associate with is anger. When Banner first turns into the green version on the left, the way Marvel described it back in their official handbook was that the Hulk would start out being strong enough to lift an object weighing 100 tons, and then he would just escalate from there. In contrast, the Thing from the Fantastic Four was described as being able to lift routinely 85 tons, so significantly less stronger than the Hulk, even when the Hulk was calm. The the Hulk, of course, the longer he fights, the more stress he endures, and his strength quite doubles, triples, quadruples, and the Thing can't handle that. But keep in mind also that the Thing usually doesn't fight the Hulk alone. He's part of an ensemble cast, so usually the Fantastic Four was pitching in. I came and talked this morning. You know what? I need coffee. Here, hold on a second. I'm drinking my coffee out of a can today because I ran out of coffee yesterday because I forgot how many bags I'd bought. All right. Juan Valdez, don't fail me now. Okay, actually, this is Starbucks Nitro Cold Brew. So hold on a second. All right, it'll take a few seconds for that to work. Anyway, the gray version, when he first changes, his strength level was described by Marvel as him able to lift 70 tons, or an object weighing 70 tons. So significantly less strong than the Thing starting out, but the gray version could also had the same stress factor, so he could double, triple, quadruple. He just started from a lower physical strength, and this was something that a lot of was happening to a lot of heroes back then in the 80s. If you recall, Superman was revamped after the Crisis in Infinite Earths, and they lowered his power level so that he had to struggle to do the same feats that he could do just a few years ago casually. So I mean, and they took away a lot of his other abilities. Superman used to be able to blow out a star the way that we blow out a birthday cake, right? Hard to create drama for a character who can do that. So that version, the older version of Superman, could casually pick up one of the pyramids of Egypt and fly off with it, whereas the post 1986 version could do that, but it took like supreme effort. So with effort comes drama, and it was a way they could increase the drama of surrounding a given character without really changing the abilities. Okay, so when Dale drew pages like this, now what this is a scene that's happening in Banner's mind, where the gray version of the Hulk is trying to keep the green version from coming out. And what's brilliant about this is that Dale, you could tell if this page was not colored which one was which because of the subtlety of his art. The Green Hulk has a full head of hair, whereas the Gray Hulk has the cropped hair. That's a big deal. They're both about the same size here, but it's happening in Banner's mindscape, so it makes sense that they would be around the same height since we're not dealing with these characters as they appear in the physical world. But this was a great time for being a Incredible Hulk fan because at this point, starting here, every time you got a new issue, you didn't know which version of the Hulk was going to appear in that issue. Was it going to be the classic green version that we hadn't seen for like 9 years, or and that would be a huge treat, obviously, for longtime fans, or was it this smaller yet more badass gray version who had a mean streak, who had earned his own fan following within the Hulk community. It was just a great time to be a Hulk fan because it was like pot luck. You didn't you didn't know which one was going to be involved in the next story. Most artists, when they draw the green and the gray version, they don't really do the kind of physical distinctions that Dale did. This is a piece by Lee Weeks back in 2004 where you have the green version versus the gray version, and really the only way you can tell which one is which is that the gray version has more of Banner's clothes on them. He's got a shirt or the tattered remnants of a shirt and has the tattered remnants of Banner's shoes, but otherwise they look to be about the same size. They have faces that are very similar. Their haircuts are very much the same. And I think that when an artist draws Green Hulk fighting a Gray Hulk, which is something that usually only happens in a character's imagination anyway, they rely a little bit too much maybe on the colorist. But what was great about Dale was that when he drew these two versions of the same character, he would have them both wearing just pants, ripped pants, and you could still tell them apart. He didn't need to leave some clothing on the gray version. So everything came to a head in Hulk 377. This was a very important issue, probably the most important issue in Peter David's run, and Dale got to draw this, where everything that he had been building towards for the last 4 or 5 years came to a head, and then he used that to create something new. So we're back in Banner's mind. The two versions of the Hulk persona are fighting each other, and this is having repercussions in the real world. Banner's body is morphing in weird ways between the two versions. We saw something similar to this in the movie Infinity War, where Banner was trying to summon the Hulk out, and the Hulk would kind of half of his head would turn into the Hulk, and he'd say no and all that kind of stuff. So this is very similar to that. The two of them are fighting, causing chaos, and once again, great page here. You can tell the difference even without the color, which one is which. And it came to a head where the two of them were at each other's throats, trying to strangle each other. And of course, in the real world, it looked like this, where Banner was essentially killing himself. And Bruce Banner manages to subdue in his mind's eye both versions. And in panels that I don't have for you here, what happens is in his mindscape, they all come together and coalesce into one being. And when that happens, we're left with, at the end of issue 377, this huge page where we see a new interpretation of a cured Bruce Banner. Up until this point, the idea was that a cured Bruce Banner would simply be a Bruce Banner who didn't turn into the Hulk and didn't have any split personality issues. So what Peter David here gave us was a cured Hulk that still looked exciting and that you wanted to read about. And I'm going to go ahead and show an uncolored version of this one here. Again, this is Dale Keown and Mark Farmer, I believe, was the inker on this. So first of all, he's got better posture. So he's actually a little bit taller than even the green one. This version of the character was described as 7'6". So he by standing up straight and tall, he gains another 6 inches of height. Obviously, his skin was green because, generally speaking, the Hulk is usually green. The most iconic version is green, even though the gray version had a following. Most people would prefer a green version to a gray version. And he's got the muscle. I mean, you can tell this is how Dale draws pecs. You've got he segments the muscles and the pectoral muscles so very well. But like the gray version, this Hulk has his hair cropped up at the top. The same idea that he doesn't grow new hair when he changes. So that makes him look, the haircut makes him look like the gray version. And also, if we look down here at his face, this is Banner's face. It looks more like Bruce Banner's face. Now, this is a face that can still look angry, but it can also show more complex emotions. And I don't think any Hulk artist has ever been able to given or has been ever been given the opportunity to do something like this. He created his own new version of the Hulk that just that was new, but it still resonated with all previous versions. And we couldn't wait for the next issue. Now, the next issue actually was a Doc Samson story because I think there may have been a holiday there. Maybe Dale needed more time to build up and get caught up. But the next issue was this one, where we got to know this new version, and uh, and I just love this page because this is one of I think one of Dale's first extreme close up visual face pages. But in the logo, you still have the various versions of who this person is, but now they're all combined into one. And this was one of the most unique times for the character. The character had been published regularly since about 1962 in various comics, including his own. And now we're seeing a new Hulk for the 80s, or actually the 90s. And he combined all of the best elements of everything we'd seen up until that point. And again, Dale's version here is just a perfect distillation of everything that had been published in the last 30 some odd years into one figure. Now, after Dale left the Hulk comic, and I don't know the circumstances, he might have had a contract and it just ran out and they were looking. He was replaced on the title with Gary Frank, who put his own spin on that merged character. But a couple of years later, Peter David and Dale Keown teamed up again, and they did a story called The Incredible Hulk: The End, which is in my mind the definitive ending for the character, where Bruce Banner is the last living human being on Earth. He's walking a desolate wasteland, and he is close to 200 years old. And the reason why he's able to survive that long is because every time he turns into the Hulk, his body basically gets purified of any disease or condition that would build up. So he's actually very healthy here for even for a 90-year-old man. But it's even starting to get to the limit now where turning into the Hulk isn't going to make him live much longer. And we have some wonderful flashbacks here of the various versions here. Of course, the classic green version here, the gray version when he was working in Las Vegas, and then the merged Hulk that we love so much. And some great artwork here. This was where Dale was unfettered by the 22-page format, and I'm pretty sure he did his own inking on this as well. And of course, the version of the Hulk that we see in this story is every bit as powerful and as the one from that we've used to. It's just he's very old, and a great job of doing this. Now, the cure that we talked about in his regular run apparently has undone by this point. So we're back to the classic version again, where this is the personality that comes out is the Hulk Smash Puny Humans version, and I think that that's appropriate for the ending of this character. Keep in mind this takes place in the far-flung future, a future that the regular comics will probably never get to because that would be the end of the comic. But I've always considered this to be the last Hulk story. Spoilers: it ends with Banner finally succumbing to old age and dying. And as he's dying, the stress turns him into the Hulk, and the Hulk realizes that he can never change back into Banner again, because if he does, he'll die. And so the Hulk is finally at peace, left alone. He's the last living thing, humanoid thing on Earth, and so it's a bittersweet ending for the character. All right, so this we're kind of done talking about Dale Keown's merged Hulk, but I want to talk about how art inspires other art. This is Demifoot. This is a study image that John Dillard of Dillard Draws did for me last year. Sort of a definitive look of the Hulk, or sorry, of Demifoot. Wow. I need more coffee here. Take another swig of this cold shit. Okay, so Demifoot gets a lot of his DNA as a character from the merged Hulk from Peter David's run and Dale Keown's design. A monster hero with a civilized haircut, but otherwise he's quite woolly, and obviously has the muscles and the super strength and all that. The premise behind Demifoot is that he is well, let's just do a comparison first of all. When I had John Dillard draw this, I showed him specifically this page from Dale Keown's Hulk, where I said, this is a lot of what I'm going for. A character that can look savage and can look monstrous, but can also provide more complex facial expressions. He's not angry all the time. And it's and of course he took what I asked him and gave me this, and it's still I think a very good design. Of course, I'm a little bit biased, of course, as everybody should be at least have some satisfaction in their work. But if you enjoyed the Peter David run on the Incredible Hulk, particularly the stuff with the merged Hulk, both under Dale Keown and with Gary Frank, that is Demifoot is something that you will enjoy. And in the subsequent years since Dale created this version of the Hulk, he's been bastardized, he's been retconned. Later writers like Paul Jenkins came in, Tom Brevoort came in and said, okay, this version that you love so much wasn't actually what you thought he was. They took the merged Hulk, which is supposed to be the zenith, the ultimate evolution of the Hulk, where Banner no longer has the split personality problem, and he's got a unified personality just like everybody else. He has mood swings just like everybody else, but he doesn't change persona. He doesn't physically change or anything. They said that's not what this is. This is actually a third Hulk persona that they called the Professor, which is bullshit. Talk about not getting it. Talk about taking something that was great and just ruining it. But the telltale sign, if you ever are curious, they drew the Professor a little bit differently. He didn't have the same hairdo here, this sort of Guy Gardner-like haircut. He had a ponytail. So if you see the Hulk with a ponytail, that's the Professor. But the Hulk with hair like this is the merged Hulk. And this was the original intent of this version of the character, and Marvel, quote our president, doesn't know what the fuck they're doing when it comes to this character anymore. The character has been around for so long now, and you have all these creators that try to get in there and put their own spin on it at the expense of the character. Even Peter David, when he came back to writing the Hulk, he took a character that already had not enough tragedy in his life and decided to make him even more tragic. He turned okay, so Doc's saying Keown's Kirby version. Okay. You'll have to expound on that for me a little bit, Doc. But getting back to Peter David, when Peter David came back to write the Hulk for, I think it was a 6 issue run. Uh, Keep in mind this was a different Peter David around 2000. He has always been as leftist as the day is long, and I don't want to rag on him too much because he's dead now and he can't defend himself. But he became much more of an activist after 2000. He didn't have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. He had Bush derangement syndrome, George W. Bush, and he was in New York when 9/11 happened, and he wrote a story where um, because the left wanted 9/11 to just kind of go away because 9/11 reminded them of the world we actually live in. And so he wrote a story uh, with the Hulk about, that was inspired by 9/11, where Nightmare came in, and it was this metaphysical garbage. Yes, yeah, you're right. Doc, the image I'm showing is Keown's version of Kirby's Hulk, which, but this is the merged Hulk. He came out of the hospital room, and this was the first time the audience saw what Banner would be like if he didn't have multiple personalities. He was basically a male version of She-Hulk. She-Hulk doesn't really have a split personality typically when she changes. She's the same woman, just has a different body, and this was the idea. So yeah, he took a lot of cues from that. But in terms of what to keep from each version, it was that selection that I'm talking about. The Gray Hulk's hairdo and brow, Banner's jaw and eyes, and then the rest of him was the Green Hulk, just with a better with better posture. But no, um, the Hulk already has a very tragic backstory. Bill Mantlo was the first one to do this. He took the Hulk and said, nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, that's no longer a hot topic in the 80s. It was Reagan's 80s, right? We knew about nukes now, and nukes were not something that everybody was afraid of anymore. So he made child abuse the new social topic du jour for the Hulk. He established that the reason where the Hulk's anger comes from him having been an abused child. His father, Brian Banner, abused him, and his mother murdered his mother eventually, and that's where it all comes from. Which of course doesn't work because anybody who knows anything about child abuse victims, the Hulk didn't act like that. He didn't. He wasn't. Banner regressed into a child. He had maturity even when he was a simple-minded character. He could fall in love, he could have mature thoughts, he just couldn't articulate them in a mature manner. So that was a problem. And then Peter David came in and turned a negative into a positive and used that for his whole merged Hulk storyline. But then later, and keep in mind, this was a story that came out after the Columbine. Peter David did a story where it's revealed that the Hulk's persona was actually in Banner, trying to get him to do bad things when he was in high school, and he tried to blow up his high school with a bomb. So they essentially turned Bruce Banner into a Columbine kid, which is a terrible idea if you're trying to maintain the hero status of that character, especially so soon after Columbine. I mean, those two kids were pure evil, and it was the kind of thing that a leftist would write. And of course, the way it works was that somehow when the bomb specialists came in and defused the bomb that Banner had designed with the Hulk's help, which was ridiculous. They looked at the design of the bomb he created and said, "This guy's brilliant. Let's go ahead and pay for his education and hire him for the U.S. Army to design bombs for the Army," which is not what our Army would do. There's plenty of brilliant people who can design bombs that don't actually try to blow people up. So, again, a leftist idea. Right? If you hate the Army, you're going to come up with that idea. If you don't, and I think that Peter David, there was a tipping point when he stopped trying to entertain everybody and started wanting to entertain only leftists, and that's when his career took a nosedive. He wasn't getting gigs anymore, and eventually he passed away in the reduced circumstances that he was in. Yeah. Back to Demi Foot, of course. The character goes from looking like this to looking like this, and this is an homage to Incredible Hulk 314 by John Byrne. Like I said, keep on the lookout for the campaign. It will be starting again soon. We'll do another sign up. It'll be on Fund My Comic, and we'll be doing some tweaks. But let's go ahead and see how many people we actually have tuning in live here. 5. Well, that's not bad. It's better than 0. And I thank you to the 5 people who are watching. Actually, probably one of them is me. I'm going to turn off that. Yeah, so there's only about 4 people watching, but this video will be up. I'll save it since it's basically just a Darren slideshow. I was going to leave it open for questions if we had an audience, but I think everybody's just kind of staying quiet. It is pretty early still in the morning for a lot of people, especially people in California. But yeah, one of my favorite Dale Keown pages, where this was at a point where Banner could turn into either the green version or the gray version. And, he was kind of in a pickle because if he got stressed, he'd turn into the green version. But if he waited until nightfall, he'd turn into the gray one anyway, and then all hell would ensue. And this scene where his gray version is hoisting the tank and throwing it at Doc Samson is one of my favorite ones. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Pitt, because this is very important in Dale's life right now. Pitt is the creator-owned series that he published through Image Comics initially. This is something that came out right after he left the Incredible Hulk title, and in interviews and in discussions that Dale has had on Mandy's channel, Pitt is basically the same kind of monster hero that Dale liked to draw. He liked to draw big, muscly heroes, and he wanted to add a few more elements to this creature of his. He gave him claws, retractable claws in his fingers, so he had a bit of a Wolverine, saber-tooth vibe to him. And there's also some other aspects as well. There's a little bit of Lobo in there, in that he wears chains and leather, and has longer hair and no nose, and also a Venom-like mouth. It's not exactly like Venom, but it has that sort of look. And Pitt is a comic that ran for a little while and now is available. Let me go ahead and stop sharing this here for a moment. There we go. Do this here. Isn't this exciting streaming, folks? All right, here we go. So this is Pitt Volume 1 by Mandy Summers. She's the one who's publishing it for Dale. And it's pretty successful. 591 backers at almost $80,000 at this point. I fully anticipate this going beyond $100,000. It'll probably remain open longer than 18 days. It says 18 days left there, but I think that the way that the bigger talent in Comicsgate do it is they do a flexible goal and then they just close it out when they want to. I'm not certain, but that's typically what happens. But if you were interested in getting this, I would go ahead and back it. The price is a little bit steep, but you are getting, a 106-page full color trade paperback of the first, I think, 4.5 issues of Pitt, with a option of a Michael Turner cover, or the original Pitt super extreme close-up face. It's also it's like you got bundles here, and I would recommend it if you like monster heroes, because in the grand scheme of things, the Hulk is probably the granddaddy of all monster heroes. Pitt would be like the cool uncle. So, uh, and I'm sure that Mandy will have some tricks up her sleeve to try to reach different sales goals. She might have stretch goals in mind. I don't know. I don't want to speak for her. She'll announce those things if they do in fact happen. But I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if she has a plan. But alrighty. So we managed to gush about Dale Keown all morning. Let's see. How long have we been going on here for? Oh, almost an hour. All right. So I gushed for Dale Keown for about an hour. Honestly, though, I mean, he's a human being. He's not some uh, godlike figure, but his work, I think, is what I choose to know him by. And his work was so influential on me as a teenager, reading that stuff around the time I graduated high school. That he gets a pass. I don't care if Dale Keown falls asleep on every stream he's ever on. I don't care if he moves to the United States for some reason and starts voting Democrat. I don't care if Dale Keown wakes up tomorrow morning in bed with two dead groupies. Okay, Dale Keown gets a pass from Darren Wagner, right? Incidentally, Dale, please don't wake up tomorrow in bed with two dead groupies because that's a tall order, and I'd have to, that'd take me a couple days to figure something out. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. This is the first one of regular streams I plan on doing every Thursday morning. It seems to be a good time to stream because I'm an old man. I like to get up early, and also I don't think very many people stream at this hour anyway, this time of day. So here's to it. Let's hope this audience grows a little bit, and of course you'll be getting updates on the Demifoot project as it comes closer to launching on Indiegogo. Excuse me, on Fund My Comic, and so stay tuned here. And if you're watching this after we went live, uh, all that still applies. So I want to thank you for tuning in. Have a good day.